Hello everyone. In this lesson we will learn about building up real content for one of our pages. Without further ado, let's just jump right into the action. Alright, so this is my public-facing WordPress website, and if I use my navigation to navigate to the About Us page, we can see that currently this page only has a tiny bit of placeholder content. So in this lesson, we are going to add additional content to the page, and along the way, we will learn a few new skills. Okay, so if I want to make changes to this page, if I want to edit this page, assuming I'm logged into WordPress as the admin of the website, I can just look up in the top bar of the page and make use of this Edit Page button. And that will take me directly to the edit screen for that page. So I'll begin by removing this placeholder text, and instead I will say, "This business is our pride and joy. We've been around for a long time." And then obviously you could type out a little bit more about your company or your website, but to save time, I'm just going to paste in a bit of placeholder lorem ipsum. Okay, so we can use our imagination that this is a bit of real text. Now, before we move on and learn how to include a YouTube video on the page right about here, I do want to spend just a moment letting us get familiar with this WordPress content editor. So at the moment, we just have the one paragraph, but just for testing purposes, let's drop down, so press Enter, and let's give ourselves a second paragraph. So I'll just say second test paragraph, and then you can drop down again with Enter or Return and say third test paragraph. Okay, now the reason I did this is because I want to show you how you can reorder your content. So for example, if I wanted the third paragraph here to sit above the second paragraph, you can just use these dots here. If you hover over them, you can then click and drag, and notice I could move the third paragraph to right about there, or I could even move it above my initial paragraph. Or instead of dragging and dropping, you can use these up and down arrows to move that piece of content down. So I can move the third paragraph down, I can move it up, so on and so forth. Okay, also, what if I wanted to add a new paragraph in between these two existing paragraphs? Well, yes, you could just place your cursor here and then press Enter, and sure, that gets the job done. But sometimes, depending on the content you're working with, it's actually a bit tricky to know exactly where your cursor is. So instead, I want to show you another option you have. So for example, with my cursor anywhere on this paragraph of text, I can choose these three dots right here. And there's an option to insert before or insert after. So if I click Insert After, that's going to insert a new piece of content right after it. Now, in terms of deleting content, yes, you could just use the Delete or Backspace key on your keyboard, right? So that works. However, once again, sometimes it's hard to keep track of exactly where your cursor is depending on the content. So another way to delete a piece of content, if you click anywhere on it, as long as you see this menu, you can go over to the three dots on the right, and if you scroll down or down at the very bottom of this pop-up menu, you'll see something called Remove Block. So block just means this piece of content. So if I click that, cool, we removed the third test paragraph. And then I could do the same thing for this paragraph. I could just click anywhere on it, click Remove Block. Big picture, let's not view this as a traditional word processing document, right? Instead of viewing it as one big document that's all just one continuous blob, instead we want to view it as individual blocks, independent blocks, right? So in this example, each paragraph is its own block that can easily be dragged and dropped and reordered and deleted. Okay, at this point, let's actually move forward and learn how to embed a YouTube video right about here. So let me go ahead and delete these other blocks, these other paragraphs that we don't need. Okay, so we just have our one real piece of text, and then right below it, what if we wanted to have a playable YouTube video on our page? So to make that happen, we first need a hypothetical YouTube video that we want to embed. So in a new tab, you can maybe pause this lesson video and go find a YouTube video. Okay, and then once you're actually on the screen for that one individual video, right, the screen where the video actually plays, just go up into the address bar and copy the entire URL, copy that into your clipboard. Okay, then back in WordPress, if we just pasted that URL within an existing block, nothing interesting would happen, right? So for example, if I paste that here, it just actually pastes the text like you might expect. However, if you drop down, so you press enter or return, so you're in a brand new empty separate block, and in that empty block, if you paste in your clipboard, cool, you can see WordPress automatically detected that that was a YouTube URL and it embedded the video right here. Let's go test it out. So if we use this update button, and then you should see this page updated notice in the bottom left corner, we can just click the view page link. So here's the front facing portion of our website, the About Us page, and if we scroll down, cool, there's that video, and if you click the play button, obviously it starts playing. Now in our next lesson, we can learn more about embedding third-party content like this, but for now, let's go ahead and move on. So imagine on our About Us page, below this video, so right about here, imagine we want a 2-column layout. So we want maybe the left-hand column to have text, and then maybe we want a photograph of some sort in the right-hand column. Let me show you how we can set that up. Let's use this Edit Page button to just go right back into the edit screen for this page. And let's scroll down below our video. So you can see I have an empty brand new block right about here that I can click into. If you don't currently see that, remember you can always just click sort of anywhere on this video block, and then that should show you this menu. And then remember, you can use the 3 dots on the right, and then you could choose maybe Insert After. Right? And that's going to insert a new empty block right after that piece of content. Now here's where things finally get interesting. So yes, if we just started typing in this new block, by default it will be a paragraph, meaning just a standard piece of text. However, if we don't type anything into it yet, we can choose what type of block it is. There's a few different ways we can do this. So you'll see this plus symbol right here. If you click on that, you can choose what type of block this new block is. So again, by default, it would just be a standard paragraph or piece of text, but there are all sorts of other block types. For example, in this little search bar here, if we search for columns, you can see that's an option, and we can click that. Now that would insert a column block, and I'll show you what that is in just a moment. It would insert it here. But I do want to show you another way to add these different block types. So using this icon right here is one option, but you can also always use this plus symbol towards the top left corner. So this will always be in this spot up here. You can just click it. Instead of a pop-up, that sort of gives you this larger real estate left-hand menu, and you can see all these different block types. So again, instead of just a standard paragraph of text, if we wanted to work with a multiple column layout, you can just search for columns. And then let's go ahead and click on that here to insert a columns block type. Cool, so as soon as I click that, you can see this brand new block right here. And now it's asking us, what sort of layout do you want? Do you want maybe a 50-50 column split, right? With 2 columns that are the same size? Do you want a 30-70 split? Or do you want 3 columns where each one is a third? So on and so forth. So let's go with this 50-50 split. I'll click that. Cool. So now we have a column here and a column here. And you can imagine we can just start adding content into the columns. So in this left-hand column, we can click this plus symbol, add block. And now the whole process just repeats itself, but now we're nested inside this left-hand column. So you could add a paragraph and then just start typing. Okay, and then over in this right-hand column, you could start adding a paragraph, or you could add an image. So for example, in this search bar, if I search for image, I can go ahead and click on image, and then I can upload a photo from my computer. So I'll go ahead and upload maybe a photo of myself. Scroll back up. Cool. So let me duplicate the text in the left-hand column just so it takes up a bit of space. And you can see we now have a 2-column layout. Let me go ahead and click Update, and then we can use this View Page link down here to see what it looks like on the front end, what the visitors of our site would actually see. Cool. So that's one way to set up multiple columns worth of content. But right now I want to show you a different way that is my 1 column. So the easiest way is to just sort of click in this empty area between the 2 columns. You can see that selects the entire thing. So now you could press delete on your keyboard. Cool. And let me show you another way of working with a multiple column layout. So I'm going to use this icon in the top left once again to insert a block. Only instead of clicking on blocks here, I actually want us to look at this section called patterns. Now in this search bar, if we're under patterns and we search for columns, we see a few different options. 2 columns of text. If we go down further, we see 2 columns of text with images. If we scroll down further, 3 columns of text with buttons. So WordPress gives us these different patterns, and they're really like pre-created or pre-existing recipes that we can then easily fill in instead of having to initially set it all up ourselves. So there are different patterns you can choose from, but I'm going to choose this one called 2 columns of text with images. So if I click on that, it automatically adds that into my page. Now maybe I don't want the image on the left. I just want an image on the right. So I could click on this image on the left, hit delete. Okay, and maybe this text on the left looks a little too large. It looks like larger than the standard paragraph text. So you can click on that. And then if you can't see an option area in the right-hand column, like right now I can't, for example, we can just click this gear or settings icon right here. Okay, and with that block of text on the left selected, so if you click anywhere on it, then you can see this right-hand menu is the options for that particular block. So you can see the font size right here is custom. Maybe I don't want it to be large like that. Maybe I want it to just be a standard font size. So I can just choose default. You can see that brings it back down to just the standard size. Okay, and then maybe in this right-hand column, I don't want any text at all. So I could just delete all of that text. And I just want this photograph, but I want it to be my photo, not this placeholder photo. So just click on the image, and then we can choose this replace option. And then you could either upload a photo from your computer, or I'm just going to click Open Media Library, and then click into Media Library because there's that photo of myself that I uploaded just a moment ago. So if I click on that, I can choose Select. Perfect. So that's another way to create a 2-column layout using the patterns option. Let's go ahead and click Update, and then we can view this on the front end or the public side. Cool. Looks good. Now you might be thinking, Brad, there's not much vertical spacing between the YouTube video and then our 2-column layout. What if we wanted more of a vertical gap in between these two? Well, let me show you what I would do. So let's click Edit Page here. Let's scroll down to the video. Now there are many different ways to add an additional block. You can try to click your cursor somewhere and then press Enter, but what I like to do is I would just click on the YouTube video and then use these 3 dots in this menu and just click Insert After. I find that's the easiest way to add a new block exactly where you want it to be. Okay, so now in this brand new empty block, instead of typing anything, I'm going to click this icon to choose what type of block it is. And then instead of a standard paragraph or piece of text, if I search for spacer, you can see there's a special block type called spacer. So let's click on that. Okay, that inserted this, but now you can click and drag to make it whatever size you want it to be. So let's say I want it to be 35 pixels tall. Well, you can see it's difficult to get it to that exact value instead of 34 or 36, but over in this right-hand column, you can change that value here if you wanted to. 35. Let's go ahead and click Update and then use this link to preview it on the front end. If we scroll down, cool. So that's how you can create space in between your different blocks. And right now, I do want to encourage you to explore and experiment and use all the different block types, not just the ones that I'm showing to you. So if we go back into the edit screen And if I go back down to the bottom of my content and maybe try to add a new block here, and then for the block type, for example, instead of a 2-column layout, there's another block type called, I believe, media and text. Yes, media and text. And if you click that, it's sort of an automatic 2-column layout, and then you can use these icons to choose whether you want the text on the left or on the right. And what makes this different from the other column approach that we used is that it can try to automatically fit your image to match the amount of text you're using. So if you have an image that's really tall but not very wide, so on and so forth, if you have an image that's sort of an awkward size to match with the amount of text you want to use, this media and content, or this media and text block type, can be nice to use. I won't walk you through it because other than that, it's the exact same thing. You just add some text or you upload a photo. The reason I didn't use this and I instead used the columns block is because this media and text block type, it does include sort of a bit of horizontal margin on the left. So then your content won't perfectly line up with all of your standard content up above it in terms of your left-hand margin. Maybe that's not a problem for you though. Big picture, the point that I'm trying to show you here is that, let me remove this really quick, is that there are all sorts of different block types that you can choose from. So I encourage you, you can always use this icon in the top left and just sort of explore. You can scroll through this list. For example, you can see one there's called buttons. So if I insert a button block type, and then if I click onto this area, or your cursor might be there by default, you can start typing. So I'll say learn more. Right? And then with that selected, if I open up the right-hand settings sidebar, you can see it gives you different options to change the way that the button looks. You can change the color of the button. So that's the button text. This is the button background color. You get the idea. So there are all of these different block types that you can experiment with. I encourage you to go explore on your own using this icon here. And then once you insert the block with it selected, there are all sorts of options to customize it in this right-hand settings area. And then just to avoid confusion, in this right-hand sidebar, you can choose between page and block. So page or post has to do with our document as a whole. And then the block menu, that is just specific to the current block that you've clicked on and selected. And before we bring this lesson to a close, there is one more thing that I do want to show you. So let me delete this button. I don't actually want that button. Let's say you want to have a sub-headline or sub-header somewhere in your content. So for example, up at the top, maybe before this first paragraph, but below the overall page title, what if I wanted sort of a subheader or subheading right here? So you might be inclined to click here, push enter, so then you can have this new empty block here. And by default, it's just a paragraph. So you might be tempted to just start typing and say, about the company. And then with this new block selected, you can go into this right-hand menu. And you might be tempted to increase the font size here to large, and then maybe click this icon here to make it bold. Oops, that didn't work. Let me select it and click bold. So you can see that gets the job done, but I encourage you to not do this. The reason is because we don't just want this text to look like a headline visually, we want it to be a headline from a semantics perspective. What do I mean by that? Well, what if someone comes to our website and they're visually impaired, and they have special software that will read the web page out loud to them? Well, maybe that software will read headlines differently, or maybe there's an option in their software that lets them skip down to the next subheadline. So what I'm getting at here is, let me delete this. When you want a headline, let me actually just remove that block entirely. When you want a subheader or a headline somewhere, there's a special way to do it. So again, let me insert a block here. So I could click on this and choose insert before, or you could just place your cursor at the very start of it and press enter. So now you have this new empty block right above it right here. Here's what we want to do. Let's choose the block type, only instead of paragraph, let's choose heading. So let's click this to insert a heading block type, and we can say about the company. And now if you click on that, you can see right here, you can choose between, if I click on this, H1 all the way through H6. So H1, heading 1 is a very important headline, and all the way down to H6 is less and less important. So it's up to you to choose how important the headline is. Maybe I'll go with a heading level 3. Cool. So now you are free to change the way this looks over in the right-hand sidebar. Only now, no matter what it looks like, it's also designated as a heading to the whole World Wide Web, right? To search engines, to screen reading software for the visually impaired. It just gives a bit of semantic meaning to your content. Also, I do want to show you another trick that you can have up your sleeve. So if I remove that block, so if I insert a new block, so I can just put my cursor at the start of this one, press enter, use the up arrow key on my keyboard. So you could just let this be a standard paragraph. So if I say about the company, and now if I click on that, you can see this icon, that's the paragraph icon. You can click on that to change the block type, and you can transform it into a heading. And that does the exact same thing, right? So now I can make it a heading level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Cool, that is going to bring this video to a close. Now that you're a little bit familiar with the block editor, I think the sky is the limit. You can go and experiment. In our very next video, we are going to learn a little bit more about embedding content from third-party sources. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and I will see you in the next lesson.